There we go. Now it's recording. All right, welcome everybody. I really appreciate your time in coming to this talk today. It's funny, I set this talk up. This is my first talk via Zoom, and I set it up as a meeting because that's what I'm used to. And I was technically supposed to do it as a webinar. So, while I'm going to tell you and teach you things about hearing aid technology, I'm still learning a lot about technology myself. So, um, the reason why I wanted to do this tech talk is a couple of things. One thing is and actually, I'm just going to share my screen while we get started here. So you don't have to sit and stare at me. All right. All right. I hope you can all see the slide presentation. If you can't, Mom, text me. I know you're on here. You can send me a text and say it's not working. All right. The reason why I wanted to do this is because patients ask me every day. So, what's new in technology? What's new in hearing aids? Is there anything better? And we are really in a phase of a lot of change. And that change is surrounding AI, artificial intelligence. That's really changing the game for everything, especially electronic. And the other reason why I wanted to do this talk is because I there's a lot of misinformation on social media, on the internet, from hearing aid manufacturers themselves, commercials I've seen on TV. It's really quite appalling. And I go around and I do talks at conferences to other audiologists, teaching them about some of the things we're going to talk about today, plus some other things. And I thought, well, I really need to be teaching my own patients and informing my own patients. So put this tech talk together, and I'm hoping there will be a series of different talks that I can share with everybody, being my patients. So we're going to talk about how technology is really changing right now, the latest developments in technology, and the big challenges, the big challenge of why people may not be benefiting from this change in technology. We're going to go all the way back to when I started, which was a few years ago. And I started with analog hearing aids. And I had a little baby tiny screwdriver and what we called potentiometers on the back of the hearing aid. And that's how I used to adjust the hearing aid. I could adjust volume. I could maybe adjust high pitches versus low pitches. And that's really kind of all I could do. So a really big change in hearing aid technology was going from analog to digital. And then since that time, digital's really kind of changed the game and continued to progress. Another really big step in technology was when Bluetooth hearing aids became Bluetooth accessible. And now patients could connect to their cell phones. And that was a huge game changer for patients. Also, for me as an audiologist, and it wasn't a good game changer. It was really kind of a bad one because I've had to learn a lot about phones that I really haven't enjoyed. And connectivity is not perfect. So that's been a little challenging. And now we're in this really big step up in technology, and that's because of AI, or artificial intelligence. So, what is artificial intelligence? AI in hearing aids means that the device, the computer itself, can learn and adapt just like we do. So, instead of treating every sound the same, it's able to recognize patterns and learn from things and make adjustments in real time. But it's important to know AI is not new. Even in hearing aids, it's not new. So AI started out in about the early 2000s. And it was the automatic changing between different settings in your hearing aids for different environments. So, hearing aids for a long time have been able to automatically adapt from quiet to noise to maybe music without you having to push a button and to go into different programs. And so we call that environmental classifier. And that's technology that's been around again for over 20 years. The problem is it's really important that the hearing aid gets it right. Because if the hearing aid gets it wrong, you may have the wrong volume chosen for you by the hearing aid computer. You may have the wrong microphone direction being chosen, the wrong amount of noise reduction, all sorts of things. And we really thought this technology, I thought, even as the audiologist, that it was really determining these things accurately, especially as technology kept improving. But the other problem is hearing aids don't always know what matters the most to you in the moment. Might assume that, you want to hear the person right in front of you, but in fact, you're trying to listen to the person to the side. And the hearing aid has no way of knowing that. A really good example I had happen to me this morning. I have a 2018 car that has automated windshield wipers, which is great. I love it, right? Because I don't have to monkey around with how fast they're going. I don't have to make those decisions. My car was doing it for me, but my car wasn't consistently choosing the right thing. It was convenient, but I kept having to monkey around with how fast and slow the automation was. And I was still having to make some manual adjustments. Fast forward to this morning, my 2018 car, is at the dealership because I need a new part, and I'm driving a courtesy 2025 version of my car. And I pulled out of my garage this morning and my windshield wipers started on their own without me doing anything. I went, oh, that's cool. And then I was driving, it was notably different how much more accurate my windshield wipers were choosing, the speed of them was choosing. However, at one point, I did absentmindedly turn it off because I didn't like what it was doing. So that's kind of that example of AI's been around, that automation's been around for a long time, but it's getting better and better in all electronics. The automatics in the hearing aids used to start off by man-made rules. All right. So the engineers at the hearing aid companies will write formulas for the hearing aid chip, and they'll say, okay, if the volume in the environment is such and such a level, then the volume in the hearing aid should be blank. Or if there is multiple sound sources coming in, then you should switch to such and such a program. So it's this if this, then that. And that is all performed on the philosophies of the manufacturers. And here's the really wild thing. In 2021, let me see if I don't think I can move over the closed caption. In 2021, there was a study done looking at all six major manufacturers, and they all chose quiet when it was a quiet environment. But anytime the complexity changed at all from a quiet environment, they all picked a different environment. Not one picked the same environment, and they can't all be right. So, relying on these kind of man-made rules about if this, then that, and the philosophies of those different manufacturers obviously isn't ideal. So, the manufacturers have had to deal with making decisions about, do we want our hearing aids to really be set on focusing to give patients that focus in noise? And this is primarily in noise. Or do we want to give our patients environmental awareness, more awareness of what's going on around them? And because hearing in noise is so challenging, especially when you have a hearing loss, um, a lot of them for a long time decided we're going to go to focus in front of you. Uh, but then the problem is you were losing a lot of environmental awareness, which is very important for your brain. Your brain needs that information to be able to hear somebody coming up behind you or talking beside you. And so you might be at dinner and you're hearing the person in front of you okay, but the waitress comes up and you totally miss what she says. Or you're at a lecture and somebody says something beside you, but you miss what they say. Or you're in a restaurant and you're walking to across the restaurant and you want to be able to hear things going on around you and you can't because it thinks you just want to hear right in front of you. But modern technology, the changes in AI are really changing that. Today's hearing aids are actually learning to do both and being able to adapt. So let's talk about what AI is doing. First, we're going to talk about artificial neural networks. And I'm going to try not to get too deep into what AI is in general, but we do need to have a little bit of an understanding about what AI is in general. Artificial intelligence, especially in the form of artificial neural networks, are inspired by our brain. So, how the human brain works. AI systems utilize virtual neurons, they're really called nodes, that connect and communicate with each other, just like our brain cells or our neurons do in our brain. And that allows them to learn from experience, getting better over time by adjusting internal settings, kind of like how we learn from trial and error. And they're like our brain in that they're able to analyze vast amounts of data to identify patterns and make predictions. That's exactly how our brain functions neurologically. It's kind of scary, not gonna lie. So, I want to talk about how AI is different from how our brain works as well. Our brains are composed of billions of neurons that can adapt, grow, and rewire themselves after injury. And AI systems are much simpler than that. Our brains also can feel, imagine, and understand. And AI does not have thoughts, emotions, or awareness. AI is simply following patterns in data. So while AI is smart in its own way, it's not a brain. It's a helpful tool that takes ideas from brain science and turns them into something practical, like making your hearing aids better able to adjust to your environments. Within hearing aids, if you look at literature at all, you hearing aid manufacturer literature that is, and when I'm talking about hearing aid AI, it may be that you see the term deep neural networks. That's what it's called in hearing aids. And deep neural networks is simply a type of artificial neural network. And this deep neural network in hearing aids and we say, oh, the hearing aids are now learning. And I'm like, okay, how does it learn? So how does the hearing aid learn? And it learns through training, just like we do. So it's not enough to say, oh, this hearing aid has a DNN. Well, that doesn't tell me much. Um, what was its training? How was it trained? How is it learning? And it learns and it gets trained through examples. And the more examples that the computer gets to recognize, the better it gets at recognizing things. So if our goal is to help emphasize speech in the midst of background noise and give more support for speech and noise, then we want to give it a lot of examples of what speech is and what noise is. And over time, This system learns how to make smart decisions about how to handle new situations that it's never seen before based on what it was trained on and how it learned. So here's an example. So let's imagine we're going to teach the computer, we're going to teach the hearing aid what a coffee shop sounds like. So I give it 10 short recordings to it. And then I give a novel one that's from a different coffee shop that it's never heard before. And I ask the computer, the hearing aid, what is this? It might say it's a kitchen, a restaurant, or maybe even a construction site. It's only had 10 examples to learn from. But if I give it 10,000 real coffee shop recordings, it starts to understand different voices talking over each other, clanking dishes, the espresso machine. And now I give it a novel one that's a little bit different, but it recognizes more things. And it's like, oh, we're in a coffee shop. So the more real life examples that we give it, the better your hearing aid becomes at recognizing and making accommodations for you in those different situations. How does this DNN or this AI, this neural network, think like our brain? And it really has three parts. Now, this might be getting a little too into the weeds more than you wanted, but bear with me. The first part when we're training it is the input layer. So if you look over here on all of these circles, the input layer would be this top layer. And instead of 4, it would probably have hundreds or thousands of these input nodes where we show it these sound samples. We give it all these different sound samples. So we give it the 10,000 coffee shop sound samples. And then the output layer at the bottom is we tell it, this is a coffee shop. We're teaching it, this is a coffee shop. In between are all those hidden layers, and that's where the magic happens. That's where it does all of its thinking. The hidden layers are where it learns how to process the sound, detect the patterns, and make decisions. The more layers that are hidden between what we give it and what we tell it is, the more complex thinking the hearing aid can do, and the more power that it has to really resolve real life situations that you're in. Why do you need to know this? Well, because there's a lot of information out there, and a lot of hearing healthcare professionals don't even understand this, that it's not enough for a hearing aid company to say we have a deep neural network and compare it to another hearing aid that has a deep neural network. That doesn't tell me how it was trained, and it doesn't tell me how many layers you have and how smart it is. So there is a difference out there right now between different manufacturers on their deep neural networks and how they're functioning. So there's a little fun comparison that AI came up for me. So a small DNN, a small deep neural network that has just a couple layers between what we give it and what we tell it is like a frog's brain. It's pretty basic, can do simple tasks. But a large DNN that has many layers is more like a human brain. I already told you it's never going to be exactly like a human brain, but more like a human brain that has more neurons, more thinking, better results, better analysis. Who are you going to trust, a frog or a human, to make decisions about how you hear in a crowded room? So larger deep neural networks can be trained on more environments. They remember more patterns so they can be faster and more accurate. And that's why those hearing aids are going to sound more natural and work better in noise. It's not just AI that's changed, though. Hearing aids now have, well, they've always had sensors on them, but now they have more sensors. So hearing aids have this AI technology. There's also these sensors. The sensors they've had forever are the microphones. Microphones are sensors. So they've got multiple microphones on most hearing aids. But now we have sensors on some of the hearing aids. We have okay, I have the hardest time saying this word. They have accelerometers. That's still not right, but that's how I say it. That can detect movement. Why would we need that in a hearing aid? Well, it's important for that AI chip to know, oh, he's moving, he's sitting still. Um, how are you moving? Why? Why would that be important? Well, if you're sitting in a restaurant and you're sitting, you probably want focused on hearing the person in front of you. But if you're walking to the bathroom in the restaurant, you probably want to hear all the way around your head because you want to hear if somebody's coming up to you and so on and so forth. You don't want to be focused right in front of you. And so when you're moving, you probably want more of that environmental awareness. And when you're sitting still, you probably want more of that front focus. And so that's why sensors become really important and the type of sensors. And not all the hearing aids have the same kind of sensors or the same number of them. Some of them can also sense what direction you're turning, if you're nodding, if you're leaning, kind of trying to predict what your intent is, what your preference is, and what you're trying to listen to in that noisy environment. And then, that kind of basic, are you in noise? Are you in quiet? What kind of noise? Those sensors are even helping to inform the chip on that. And then learning the sound patterns over time. These devices can learn your preferences over time. If you're making changes in the app, some of the hearing aids will learn from that. Some hearing aids have a button that you push when you're not hearing well, and it will scan with their sensor all the way around and then inform the AI chip, this is what's happening. And over time, the AI chip learns how to adapt better. What are you going to notice as a patient? Well, patients with this new type of AI that's out are noticing they're hearing better in noise. Not perfectly. Hearing in noise is challenging with hearing loss and as we age. But the hearing aids are getting more natural sounding, a lot sharper and clearer. They're having to do fewer adjustments. The devices are getting better over time, actually, as they wear them, and they're responding faster to the changing environments. And some, not all, have better battery management. So some of the devices with the rechargeable battery, the battery's lasting even longer. But here's what AI doesn't do. It does not read your mind. So AI is not going to replace your brain, and it does not cure hearing loss. So it's important to understand that the sound still has to go through your broken auditory system. So you have hearing loss in the sensory organ in your ears, you still have hearing loss there. And what that does, you hear with your brain and not your ears. You all know that because I've told that to you many times. Your brain isn't getting certain cues from the ears because the ears can't pick that up. And then there's the auditory nervous system and all the things that happen for our processing. And our processing changes with hearing loss and severity of hearing loss, and it changes with age. So it slows down. It isn't as good reading cues from both ears and integrating that. It isn't as fast. And so the hearing aid and what AI is doing can help support hearing and noise better because it's trying to adapt in a better way for you. But we still have to work with your hearing loss and the changes to your auditory system. AI still depends on a proper fitting. So this is the big challenge and why a lot of people still won't benefit from the changes in AI technology is because hearing aid success, yes, depends on technology. How smart is the hearing aid? But it also depends on how it's fit. And when I talk about how it's fit, I'm talking about the physical and the acoustic fit, basically how sound behaves. Um, Physically, it's got to be comfortable, it's got to be secure, but more than anything, it has to be delivering sound efficiently without distortion or leaking of sound. I will say the other really big thing in new technology is we can get a lot more sound without the whistling or the feedback. That's something else that's continuously improved over time. Um, some of you and a lot of people wear the domes instead of a customized earpiece that connects to the hearing aid behind the ear in your ear, and that what I've learned and what we've learned in the last, I don't know, 5, 10 years maybe, is that um, there's more leaking, not 10 years, more like five. There's more leaking of sound than we realized with those domes. And that might be good for some of you, and it might be bad for others. And that's something that I've definitely been looking at and improving how I've been physically fitting the devices for different patients, but also acoustic fitting. And that's how is the device tuned. This technology is only good if you can hear it, if it's audible enough. The sounds are audible enough for you at different pitches. And unfortunately, still to this day, over 75% of providers aren't measuring that. And I'm seeing a lot of patients coming in mainly from a big box that were not fit appropriately physically or acoustically. And nothing to me is more frustrating than that. But it matters. So you can't, I think the big challenge with this is everybody thinks it's technology, technology, technology. I just need to buy the right hearing aid, but technology is the tool and we still have to fit it right. Really is going to work best if it's personalized to you by a provider who understands the technology, understands acoustics, how sounds work in the ear, so that it is fine-tuned correctly. And then ongoing follow-up is still important. We're still putting electronics in an orifice of the body. It is a hostile environment for electronics. We still need to keep it clean. We still need to keep it dry and pull out moisture out of it. We still need to test it and make sure that it's doing all of the things that it's supposed to be doing. And we do all of those things, offer those things for patients within our Hear Care plan. The invitation is the other thing is it's not going to benefit for you if you are somebody who hasn't actually tried it. And so you can come in and experience the difference yourself, test out the new technology against your existing devices. We've been doing this for a while now. There's no obligation at all. There's no appointment fee. We're just going to let you listen to that. We're going to pipe in some simulated noise. We're going to talk about the technology and the differences between the different manufacturers and the different ways that they're doing things, so that you can experience it for yourselves. And with that, I'm going to stop the share and I'm going to open it up. If anybody has any questions, you can put it in the chat.